Welcome back to Final Fantasy Ultra Champion Edition. When we last saw this team, they had just picked up the ship from the Pirates' Cave down there. In the time between, I have done a little bit of grinding and just a little bit of shopping as well. So we're looking at our stats. We've all made it to level 7. Not a whole lot of damage there for Zonk physical damage. I've done a little bit of equipment upgrading and a little bit of spell buying, but we did not get all of the upgrades because I'm getting a strong sense that this game is going to be the way that the gold curve and the experience curve also is designed. We're going to have to make some tough choices at every step. This party is not, at least in the early game, going to have the kind of scratch to buy all of the upgrades at every town. Now that's really the way it is also in vanilla version. You really, if you're not doing much grinding between, you're not going to have the kind of money to buy all the things you need at every step, but the gold curve definitely has been nerfed a little bit in this one, so to try to afford every spell and every piece of armor and every weapon at every town is really going to require some extreme grinding, because the battles that you're used to getting 200-300 for gold are, in the less than 100 range. And so I'm thinking that is on purpose. I'm assuming that was a purposeful design to kind of force the player to decide what he or she really needs the most when they reach a new town. Is it going to be a new axe for my Viking? Is it going to be maybe a new next level spell or two? And which one do I want to get first? Obviously, you would like all of the spells eventually, but you need to prioritize a little bit. We're going to take a look at the Dwarf Cave. You notice that the ship does not need a port to dock, which is very interesting. And they say tally-ho rather than rally or lally-ho, which is probably closer to what they were shooting for. Dwarves can see in the dark. That is taken right out of the vanilla version. There's a reference to the floater, and I believe they mentioned that. Rings and staves cast spells. That's a new one, I think. Narek is digging a canal. There's definitely reference to Narek digging his canal in the vanilla version. This is normally where Smith, the blacksmith, lives, but he's not standing there. There's a reference to the Earth Cave. The earth is rotting slowly from the west. Another tally-ho. But yeah, normally Smith is right over there. And that is from the vanilla version. You can inspect those swords. It's one of the few inanimate objects in the first game that you can inspect and have it tell you something. You've got the fountains that say, come wash your face. You've got the, no, this is just an ordinary well. You've got that. There is Narek there waiting for the TNT. And this door is locked to the Mystic Key just as it is in the vanilla version. So the Dwarf Cave, especially in a run like this where gold is at a premium, it's definitely worth a visit here to pick up the free gold that you can get before the key. Otherwise, you don't have to come to the Dwarf Cave until you have picked up the TNT. So if you don't need the cash there, you can skip it. So my fire spell and on Zonk there is going to remain useful at least throughout the rest of the early game here. And I noticed when you have, I'm not sure what the effectivity of that fire spell is. It's big, and I noticed that pay careful attention to elemental resistances and elemental weaknesses is going to be a big part of getting through this game. Because we have the extra spell charges, we can use our spells a lot more often, and because of the way battles are designed, we really need to use them a lot more often, especially with this party where running away from battles can be very difficult and can take a long time to successfully run away from a random battle. I'm finding that enemy combinations like Wolf, Grey Wolf, Imp, Grey Imp, I'm finding those extremely difficult to run from sometimes. And they're battles that can just be really, really frustrating to fight through because they just take forever, especially with a more defensive-minded party like what I have here. Looking at my party makeup, the Paladin is not doing nearly the kind of damage that I was thinking with physical attacks. He can only equip hammers. I was thinking that the Paladin would be closer to the Knight class, but definitely the Paladin is kind of a... I'm not really sure what kind of category to put on him, but there's the Arrow spell, by the way. Arrow is a single targeting attack that does nice damage, but it's single targeting. Fire is also single targeting. Bolt and Ice are both all targeting, so the Ice spell at level 2 there is an all targeting spell. And I believe it's like that for the entire family. I believe all of the Fire family is single targeting for good damage. All of the Bolt family is multi-targeting for some damage. And Ice is also multi-targeting. So I'm just checking my spells there. I did fill some out there for the Paladin, so he can cure poison and things. So you can see at 1,000 each, these spells are going to be, at a premium, as does everything. So I pick up Holy there because my Paladin can cast the direct damaging white spell, so he can pick up Holy and Holy 2. The Cleric down there cannot. The Cleric cannot pick up those Holy spells. The Priest and looks like the Paladin can cast the Holy spell, so that's nice for the upcoming Marsh Cave. That will be handy. So I'm getting as much upgrade as I can, but again, you're seeing having to make some tough choices. Down here, I'm getting just as much as I can, but even after doing some grinding, I'm only sitting at a few thousand. So let's check out the Elfland Castle. Let's see what the elves have to say. I'm just looking at text to see what things have been changed, if any. This is all pretty similar, if not just right out of the vanilla version. References to the prince being put to sleep by Astos. And a reference again to the Mystic Key, which the prince is holding. Presumably it's just in his pocket or something while he's sleeping. So there's a reference to the Dwarf Cave, so if we had not been there yet, we could check it out. Although I'm not sure in the text of the game if you know that the sea that you start in is called the Aldi Sea. So we need the herb to wake the prince, just as in the vanilla version. But the Aldi Sea would have been mentioned in the manual of the US NES version. So here we go. So he made sure the antidote was safely locked away in his castle, so we know that we're going to have to go there to get the herb. But the game would not have any mention of the Aldi Sea in the text of the game. Or you wouldn't have been told where the Aldi Sea was, if that was just the inner sea and the continent that we start in. All right, so we're saving up, and we're going to head west and see what's waiting for us out there. This is typically in the vanilla version where you run into a new enemy encounter set. So you start to see, when you get down here by Elfland, you start to see some of your first poisoning enemies. Particularly the asp enemies, the snakes that can poison you. And the Ogre Creep combination is mentioned even in the NES Vanilla version manual as a great source of money. The Ogres in Vanilla give you $195 each for gold. That has been turned down significantly. You can see less than 100, and that's for both the Ogre and the Creep. The Marsh Cave is a lot closer to Elfland, which is very, very handy. Thankfully, it's much closer. Normally, it's a little bit more of a walk across a swamp that is infested with undead and some nasty things that can really make your trip kind of dangerous and really sap your resources, which is the vanilla version definitely is a game of attrition. And most of the ROM hacks of this game, their challenge comes that same way, to just drain your resources until you don't have enough healing or you don't have enough offensive juice to continue. And I think part of that is because of the limitations of what the game could do. A lot of ROM hacks, this one included, try with varying levels of success to work in a lot more customizability and a lot more decision making. And so whenever you have more flexibility and more room for the player to make choices, you're going to get a deeper experience. You just have to make sure it's balanced. Or balanced well. So here's an undead encounter. We've got the shadow zombie combo. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in another video, but the hammer type weapons inflict massive damage upon the corporeal undead that I've noticed, just as they do in D&D for time immemorial. Hammers and blunt weapons have done more damage to undead, the corporeal ones anyway. So the humanoid kind of undead, the zombies, the ghouls, and also the skeleton type, I have noticed you get that critical hit on. The ghostly type undead, I don't believe you get that bonus. Now, this staircase normally goes up to an upper floor of the Marsh Cave, but in this case, it's actually the exit. You can't just step down in the Marsh Cave and step back out, which gives the impression, if we're going from a visual narrative standpoint, which I like to talk about in these games, the Marsh Cave is a hole in the ground on the world map. It's a hole. It's not it's not a cave entrance. It's not a door. It's a hole. So I'm guessing, and this maybe is me going out on a limb a little bit, that the designer of this patch wanted it to look like a hole that you had to lower yourselves into, which wouldn't necessarily have a set of stairs right there to go instantly back out, unless you left your rope dangling, I suppose, from the top. But that's the suggestion. At least that's how I read that particular piece of visual narrative. So we've explored a little bit of that main floor there. I'm just going back to replenish and save up. Now that we know we've got a set of stairs on that opening floor going up, that's our exit. And I'm just upgrading with a little bit of the money that I got. And I fell just short after selling that. After selling his old piece of armor, I fell just short of having enough gold for a stay at the inn. So I'm actually going to have to go out and fight a battle outside of Elfland here, just to have enough gold to stay at the inn. And the Ogre Creep combination will give us enough. And thankfully, we still have some good spells from our Sage who can take these guys out. And there's my upgraded axe doing good damage, and my upgraded hammer doing good damage. Not as much as I'd like, but enough to get me a stay at the inn and have to have another crack at the Marsh Cave. So you can see I haven't gotten all of the upgrades that are available in Elfland, and I'm just running out of money. Poor. So that's I think going to be the theme for the next few towns at least. In the NES version, by the time you get maybe to the through the end of the mid-game trio or the mid-game troika, you finally have enough money where you can start getting most or all of your upgrades at every town if you're playing it quote-unquote casually. This is one of those battles that can be kind of annoying, difficult to run from, but enough enemies that it would take you a while, especially with a less hack-and-slash party like mine, to actually fight your way through without burning spell charges, which I don't want to do on 4 wolves, especially when I'm on my way to a dungeon crawl. All right, so now we're heading down in the Marsh Cave. So here's a set of bones and a crawl. The crawls are paralyzing enemies. They do very little damage, and they are very similar to how they are in the vanilla version. They do very little damage per hit, but they get something like 6 or 7 hits. Each one, there's 8 hits. But each one has a chance to inflict stun status, but I think their damage is just 1 to 2. It's just that their damage value is 1, so they can do 1 to 2 per hit. 1 to 2 per hit, which is going to almost always be reduced to 1, except on a critical. It's going to be reduced to 1 because we have Absorb, but the crawls are really just there to paralyze your characters. And when they have up to 8 chances to hit you with a small plinky attack that can inflict stun, they're going to do it almost every action they take. But they were an enemy that that on the bestiary that came with the US NES version that I had when I was a kid, they looked like a very appetizing enemy because it says their damage was just 1 to 2. I was like, wow, that's nice. So here is the next floor down on the Marsh Cave, and it looks similar to one of the floors of the vanilla version Marsh Cave, where it's just a long series of rooms laid out in a big square. So I'm going to try to tackle each row and be thorough with this one. One of the reasons that I kind of prioritized getting some spells and not getting as many armor and weapon upgrades was that I'm conjecturing that some of these step-up weapons and armor will be waiting for me down here in the Marsh Cave. Because that's the way it is in the vanilla version. There's an iron armor and a couple other nice pieces waiting for you down here. So already it's paying off a little bit. I got a bronze or an iron shield. I did just pick up some iron plate armor for my paladin because I was getting a little bit nervous about going down there and sticking him in the front row, especially where he's going to be paralyzed and taking a lot of hits. Because Esper, my paladin up there, will be paralyzed quite a bit in this game. He will be getting hit by a lot of undead, and if and until I can get some equipment that will give me a bonus to that, or some resistance to getting stunned, that's going to be how life is for us. There's Holy One, takes out the regular bones. And notice the really nice damage that hammer did to the red bone. And again here, big damage to the bone-type enemies. And there's the crawl again. But crawls by themselves are not very threatening. They really, again, they're just there to paralyze your characters. So a single crawl by itself is not really anything to be too scared of. Now, healing potions are massively expensive in this game, which really puts a lot of value on healing spells. And so you notice that the heal spell, which we think of as generally the characters who can cast harm or holy are the ones who can cast heal. So in the vanilla version, the knights, when they get white magic, they cannot cast those kinds of spells. Those are reserved for the white mage, for the cleric only. They're the priest only spells in the vanilla version. So that has stayed more or less consistent here, where the one that can cast holy can also cast the area of effect heal. And the one that cannot cast those can have access to the cure, the single targeting cure spells. And also some of the other healing spells like Purge, and I believe Slow is in there too. So these are the shadow enemies. These ones will inflict the darkness status, which I can report seems to work quite well in this particular version. In the vanilla version, the darkness status does not work. It doesn't function as it's supposed to. So you can get into darkness status all day long, and it will not really influence your chance to hit. But in this one, it seems to have a significant chance to reduce your attack rate. So have to be very careful. And you know what? I'm curious now. I'd have to check this. Maybe hackers can answer this question. When you get hit with darkness status, does it reduce your attack percentage in terms of calculating how many hits your character gets? So, for example, if you have attack percent of 34, you should qualify for 2 hits. But in darkness status, does it lower that number to below 32, which would make you only have 1 attempt to hit? If so, that really, really boosts the impact of darkness status. So it's not just reducing each hit's chance to hit. It would be reducing your number of hits and reducing each hit's chance to hit. I have never thought about that, and that's something maybe I will look up on my own in the algorithms guide. That's very interesting if that's how that functions. Although the algorithms guide for the vanilla version, it doesn't work. Darkness doesn't work. So the cleanse potion, that's just gonna heal me my poison. Now this one suggests it's boss time coming up. So I'm going to use my heal spell here because the paladin there can only cast heal and purge at that level spell, and I'm projecting that I won't be needing to cure much poison. So these are the wizards, although they go by Pisco demons. And I'm just conjecturing that they're going to be throwing a lot of physical attacks at me and that they will be susceptible to lightning elemental damage. And it looks like I guessed right, at least on that front. And they are throwing a lot of physical damage at me, physical hits at me. But looks like they also have the status attack. Yeah. Status attack sleep, status attack mute. Now, one thing I'm noticing with this one, and I'm just guessing it's just a little thing about how battles are programmed and the changes that were made. It appears that when a status is inflicted on a character, it will often flash the prompt twice at the bottom of the screen. So it'll say if like poison is applied, it'll say poison, poison. I'm not sure if that has a meaning, or I'm not sure if that's just a hiccup in some of the changes that were made to the battles, but it'll flash it. It'll say poison, poison. Now there it says silence to sleep, so we have two statuses applied there. But I'll watch for that. But meanwhile, the battle with the wizards is going pretty well. Having access to that Bolt 2 spell really helped. And I don't think that the wizards are weak to it in the vanilla version or in this one. I think it's just they don't resist it. I don't think they're actually weak to it. They might be, but in this one, it did not appear that they were weak to it. It just seemed like they did not resist it. When the ice spell did significantly less. So instead of getting the crown, which we normally pick up here in the vanilla version, and the crown is what Astos is after. Instead of picking up the crown, we pick up the TNT, which normally the TNT is in the treasure room of Coneria Castle, which is locked with a mystic key. So you need the crown to go fight Astos. Astos gives you the eye, the crystal eye, and then you bring that to Matoya, who gives you the herb. But we did not see Matoya. A little inside baseball here, I believe the programmer of this patch repurposed the Matoya's Cave into a dungeon. So you repurposed that area of the game's realm into another dungeon. So I don't know if we're actually going to meet Matoya at all. So that just means that we'll have to, in this trading sequence here, there may have been a slight adjustment. That's why we have TNT waiting for us down here. So if we wanted to, we could go right on towards Melmond and the Earth Cave if we wanted to. I noticed the set of stairs down there in the corner, but I'm going to examine these treasure rooms and hope to pick up some more good stuff. 5 ghouls. So again, I don't have any more casts of Holy there, so Esper will likely get stunned here. And I can do critical damage with my hammers, but he's going to be paralyzed. Many rounds of this game he'll spend paralyzed. Holy can take out ghouls in one shot, but it has to roll on the high side of its damage. Ghouls, I think they only have 50 hit points in the vanilla version. They seem to have maybe 90 or 100 or so here. The README to this game is not I think I mentioned this before, it is not a comprehensive algorithms guide, which is fine. It is just a guide to some of the changes that have been made, and it's a spell guide, although it does not list the effectivity of spells. It just tells you what spells do. So that fire spell that seems to do really nice damage, that single targeting fire 1 spell there at level 1, I'm not sure what its E value actually is, so I can't accurately predict its range. I mean, maybe it's around 50, which means its base damage is 50 to 100, but if it doubles, it can do up to 200. But then if it gets resisted, it can go down into the 20s. Now that's just my guess from an observation. Now there's another set of stairs going up, down on this side. And there's another silk robe. I believe I may have already picked up a silk robe because Zonk just needed defense so badly. And now there was, I think, a double poison flash right there for T-Hawk. There was a double poison flash. Now this is an interesting thing about this spell. And I'm guessing this was done on purpose. Purge, the poison healing spell, is single targeting when you're in the menu, but it's all targeting when you're in battle. So it's actually better to cast Purge while you're in battle, because you can get it to target everybody. Now, before we head out, I'm just going to check down here to see if this is a gateway to another floor. If this is a gateway to another floor, I will not be exploring this other floor because we will need to save up, obviously, after beating the wizards and replenish our spell charges. There's great damage. You look at almost 300 damage to the ghoul, so just landing a hit is enough to just about one-shot those guys. And of course, the axe does its own damage. It's nothing to sneeze at. And this one is just a chest with kind of a troll piece of armor in it, a bronze armor which has been outdated. I think that's the set of equipment you can pick up in Provoca. But again, the putting less than awesome things in treasure chests is a proud Final Fantasy I tradition. So I certainly would not list that as a fault of this game, because goodness knows the vanilla version had plenty of chests that had useless pieces in them. And later in the game, you would be throwing away sometimes a nice piece of armor because you ran into a chest that had a piece of armor in it, but you could not see what it was. So you'd have to drop a piece of armor to open a chest just to see what was in there and to find out, oh, it's like a copper helmet. No, I don't know if copper helmet's that might not be an actual piece of armor from the first game, but there's definitely a cloth in the ice cave. There's a cloth armor just hanging around in the ice cave. I think it's even guarded by a nasty battle. So definitely a troll piece there, but there's other just kind of rando bits or measly amounts of gold. They'll just be like a single digit or double digit amount of gold in a chest that you'll have had to walk and fight several nasty battles to reach. And then yeah, here you go. Take this. So that is a long and proud Final Fantasy I tradition. So we I believe we have cleared the Marsh Cave. As soon as we can safely escape the clutches of the undead here, which is never, it's never a gimme. It's never a gimme. Now it will be, because I believe zombies in this version and in the vanilla version do not have the status attack stun. They're kind of supposed to be the first undead enemy you fight. They pop up in the Temple of Fiends, so if you run around the Temple of Fiends long enough, you'll run into sets of 4 zombies, and that's how you learn that the harm spell can throw damage at the undead. So that's our Marsh Cave clear. Next time we'll be going on, maybe taking on Astos and seeing what's waiting for us on the other side of the Aldi Sea, outside of the inner sea we're trapped in here for now. If you like this video, please feel free to give me that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment if you have questions or comments about these videos. I always love hearing from you. If not, no problem, and we will see you next time.